The BOE and the big moves as well this morning from that central bank. It is time though now for Options Insight. Just about 40 minutes to that closing bell. Want to get you up to speed with the day's options trading. Abigail Doolittle, of course, looking at really what's been driving the July rally so far for equities.
Well, Taylor, it's funny because there's just so many factors, and of course that earnings season being less bad, the Fed raising 75 bips as opposed to 100 bips. But there's one other factor at hand, at least one other factor, I should say, and that's the record inflows to the SQQQ. That, of course, is an ultra or a leveraged short version ETF on the QQQs. Christian Fromhertz of Tribeca Trade Group, why don't you jump on in here? And this really stands out to you. So talk to us, explain to us why you think that this could be a big driver of July and what it means going ahead into August and September.
Hey, Abigail, great to be here. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting and I think notable just to kind of understand how this market has been positioned over the last month. And, SQQ, which is not the largest ETF in the world, it is interesting that we're seeing that kind of inflows, right? These are the largest inflows ever to go into this particular three times inverse ETF. $1.7 billion over the last month. I mean, believe it or not, that's the largest inflows that this ETF has ever had. So when you look at this positioning with the market, part of the market, the speculators have been pretty short. And that also goes along with S&P futures positioning too by the same group, the speculators, who have a pretty large short position too. That kind of, helps understand what's going on in this market right now.
Yeah, and so, one theme, of course, we were just talking about this, the less bad than earnings. There was so much trepidation coming into this earnings season that it was going to really be horrible. And it wasn't necessarily great, but there were modest beats, and that was enough. But you make the point that some of the highly shorted names, such as Chipotle and Netflix and Etsy and a few others, that because their quarters were okay or even better, that those shorts really got squeezed.
Yeah, I mean, I think and what really kind of set the tone is when you heard, some things from Target and Walmart, and everybody thinking, geez, the consumer's really weak. And then you look at the results by some of these companies, the Etsy, the Uber, and Chipotle, and a few others in there too, just shows that, hey, the consumer, it's different levels of the consumer, and they may not be spending on some things, but they may be using their money otherwise. And really, when you have those results that come in better than expected in the short interest, you could see some pretty volatile moves.
Yeah, that certainly is the case. A July to remember for lots of those names. And, it's interesting because the VIX is close to 20. That VIXen is still a little bit elevated at 28, but it is certainly coming in too. But moving back to the consumer, Nordstrom, 20% short interest. They're reporting earnings. You like a trade idea on this one?
Yeah, and it is basically what we've been seeing in option flow. We've been seeing a lot of pre-positioning going into some of those earnings. So just in case some of those names like a Nordstrom, which has about a 20% short interest, in case it does see that type of covering, we saw a pretty nice sizable bull risk reversal where they went and they bought the September 27.5 calls for about $1.20, and they sold 6,500 contracts of the September 20 puts and collecting 72 cents. So, a way to kind of finance that trade. And I like the calls. I don't think that necessarily you have to throw in the put side, but the calls for about $1.20 makes sense in terms of a high short interest name. And if it does say anything positive, you might get a nice move to the upside.
Well, great perspective as always, Christian Fromhertz, tracking the inside tape on those options trades, and that one a bit of an unusual one. Christian Fromhertz of Tribeca Trade Group, thanks for joining us for Options Insight today. And from New York, this is Bloomberg.